Okay. Let's wait till this shows up. So we're gonna be taking a look at some of your essays. So some of you guys wrote essays. That's good. Um, and don't don't take any of this personally. Okay. I'm not. I mean, this is all for you. So if this is your essay, make sure to take notes on it. And if it's not your essay, then just note that what this person may have done better or what this person has done well, that kind of thing. So you guys should be taking notes. So so today's our last class for this essay class. So after we're done, you guys have been writing in your packet, so you should write it down in a separate note so that while your memory is fresh, so that you can review it later. Okay, so make sure you do that. If you just keep it in your packet, you're not going to take a look at it. So it's okay to write in your packet today, but later, just write it somewhere else. Okay, and okay. So before we go into the essays, though, I want to do kind of a recap of what we're going to be trying to do. So it's when it comes to the intro, basically what you want to have in the beginning is nothing so fancy. Okay, so maximum 3 sentences. Okay, so you don't want anything longer than that, because if you try to have more than 3 sentences, it's likely that you're gonna spend time on this. I don't want you to spend time on the intro. Where I want you to spend time are the body paragraphs. Okay, so don't spend too much time in the intro. It should just be automatic. Like even you're even thinking about something else while you're writing the intro. So what's going to happen in the intro? So the first sentence, if you're going to break it up into 3 sentences, it's fine if you combine these 3 ideas into just 1 sentence even. That's what we've been doing, right? We've been writing like a really compact 1 sentence intro. So what should be included in the intro is basically the main point, right? This is nothing new. And the main point is at the end of the prompt, always, right? So check that first before you read the passage. We talked about that. So you want to read that main point. And if you find yourself thinking about this too much, you want to actually just write it verbatim, right? So, I mean, the main point is stated at the end of the prompt. I'm saying just state that verbatim without changing anything, okay? So just say, in this article, right? So in blah, 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 the author, okay? So you're going to write the author's name, conveys, or you can say like, I don't know, successfully conveys. And then you're just going to have the main point, right? So it's just as simple as this, okay? It's nothing so fancy. You're just going to write down the main point, and then in delivering, and then the second sentence is going to be some kind of transition in between where your thesis statement, where you mention the 3 techniques that you're going to be discussing. So you can say something like, in delivering his or her argument, the author makes use of several techniques too. And then this is going to be like a rephrased version of the main point. Okay? In delivering his argument, the author makes use of several blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to say the most notable techniques are, and then just mention the 3 techniques, okay? So if you want to spread it out like this, that's okay. You can do it in 3 sentences. But if you just want to have like a really concise, if you feel like you have a lot to write about, if you feel like your body paragraphs are going to be really long, I wouldn't waste too much time thinking about this. So don't spend much time, okay? And your body paragraphs, I'll just talk about one body paragraph, just for like a quick recap. So your first sentence in the body paragraph, it's always going to be some kind of general point, right? Some kind of general point, and you're just going to mention the technique, right? You're basically just mentioning the one of the strategies that the author chooses to use. So you're just going to say the author makes use of expert opinion, makes deft use of expert opinion in order to convey, and then just rephrase the main point again. Or if the expert opinion is not serving the main point, if it's just setting up the foundation, you should say so. So just a general point. You don't need to explain anything here. It's just you just note it, right? You just note this technique, right? That's basically it. That's the objective of the first sentence, okay? And then after that, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be quoting the part, right? So when you're quoting the part that this technique shows up, we talked about this. It should preferably be a paraphrased version of what the author is doing, but you also want to include quotes. And these quotes, most likely, they're going to be some of the key words. Okay, so I'm not saying, I'm saying like, you don't need to like quote the be verbs or anything like that, right? So you're only quoting the part if you're saying, oh, he makes use of connotative diction, something like that. So you want to pick the dictions to underline, right? Not just the whole. I mean, if you catch yourself thinking too much, yeah, just quote the entire thing, like just include the entire blob. But if you can think of something, if you can paraphrase it in your own words, and you feel like it's not going to take too much time, you should always paraphrase and just quote the parts that you think are important. Okay, and then after that, what you're going to be doing is you want to start thinking about the consequence. Okay, so consequence. But what I haven't mentioned to you guys is how to think about consequence. What's an easy way to think about the consequence? Okay, so a very easy way to think about the consequence is so in terms of the consequence, right? You want to think about the past, the present, and the future. Okay, so the past, present, and future, what do I mean by this when I say past, present, and future? So your consequence sentences could be potentially up to three sentences or 3 ideas. Okay, if you choose to do so. Yeah, this would be like a full-on consequence if you touch upon all of these. The past this is just what the author was thinking, right? So this has to do with the author's purpose, right? So basically, what was the author thinking when he or she was writing this in the past, right? So that's what I mean by past. And what kind of impact does it have in the present? Well, how does it fit in? How does it fit in to the argument? So what does it look like on paper right now? Okay. So what was the author thinking, and how does the argument fit into the present text that we have? And then after that, this is the impact on the audience. Okay. Or intended impact on the audience. Okay. So when you're talking about the consequences, when you're talking about the past, present, and future, it doesn't necessarily have to be one sentence. So if you feel like your idea needs more elaboration, you need to make more connections, it can be longer. So don't feel like you need to finish everything in one sentence, right? But one of the I'll just forego this for now. But preferably, what I really like to see, like personally, this is just my personal taste. But what I really like to see in essays is a mixture of short and long sentences. It feels like your essay is more paced if you have a mixture of short and long sentences. So you know those essays that we talked about, like. To the author, this statistic is devastating, right? Something like that. You start off with that, and then you expand on that idea, and that makes a statement to your proficiency in your writing. So it is better to just mix some short sentences every now and then, because it's going to make you feel like a more proficient writer. Right? Instead of just like really long sentences, just over and over again, that's really hard to read for the readers also, like readers of your essay, I mean, right? So this is what you should be aiming to do. And then you're going to be doing the same for every body paragraph. But what I want to mention also is, so if you have body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, body paragraph 3, you want to focus, for this strategy, you want to focus on the first 1 or 2 paragraphs, right? This is most likely gonna force you to think about the foundations on which the author builds his or her argument, okay? So you're forced to talk about the foundations here, right? The author doesn't, it's unlikely that the author just mentions the main point right away in a persuasive essay, right? It kind of sets up the problem, right? If we're talking about, like, we should preserve natural refuge, the wildlife refuge or something like that, we're going to start off with imagery describing how desirable that place is, the positives of that place, the pros, and that kind of thing, right? That's what we've seen in the Carter essay, right? But we don't see the argument right away, so you should be discussing that. And then after that, this is going to be with the body part, and usually I would suggest you use juxtaposition, right? Juxtaposition, and that's going to allow you to have, that's going to allow you to cite multiple sources, multiple quotes, right? Juxtaposition of words, juxtaposition of sentences, and then juxtaposition of paragraphs, right? So that's like an easy way. I'm not saying you should do it, okay? I'm not saying you should always do it, but this is like a fallback plan for you. If you can't think for some reason, right? I mean, if you just spot something that you're really comfortable with, say for example, you're really comfortable writing about emotional appeal. You feel like your diction is more geared towards describing emotional appeal, then I mean you can ditch what I'm saying and you can work on what your strengths are. But if you don't have any, if your thoughts are just blocked, you can go in a mechanical way and just say, okay, it's going to be a juxtaposition. Juxtaposition of what? Juxtaposition of expert opinion, or juxtaposition of certain diction, certain juxtaposition of contrasting ideas, right? Juxtaposition of what else could there be? Like various sentence structures, whatever, right? So you can just pick something and just discuss that. And then the last paragraph, then this should focus more on tone and language. Again, I'm not saying this is the way to go all the time, right? So I mean, you should know your strengths and weaknesses. But if you feel like you don't have consistency when you're writing essays, this is a way to go. Because if you do this, like I said, this is going to give you like a very logical flow, right? You're going to be forced to discuss the foundations. Then you're going to be forced to discuss the main part of the prompt, which is going to be the body paragraphs, like starting from like paragraph 3 or 4, and then last till the last 2 paragraphs or something like that. And then the tone and language, this is going to be talking about the overall overall structure, overall tone, overall attitude of the author, that kind of thing, right? So in terms of tone and language, when you're discussing tone, you want to think about, okay, what is an easy way to think about tone is, what is he describing as good and what is he describing as bad, right? So usually in a persuasive essay, they're going to have villains, right? They're going to have stuff that the author does not like, and they're going to have something that the author thinks is desirable. Okay, so that's usually how you should think about tone. What is he depicting as good? What is he depicting as bad, right? When it comes to language, an easy way to think about this is he being informal or is he being really formal, right? So the John F. Kennedy prompt, that was pretty, I would say it's rather informal, all right? I mean, I'm not saying, okay, like a really informal one that we've read would be Bruni, right? Read, kids, read. Right? When him presenting himself as an uncle, blah blah blah, relatability, build that rapport with the audience, with the readers, so that he's presented more as a relatable person rather than just like a boring journalist or something like that. On the other hand, you can be just straight up scientific, like you can just be a real objective, and you just state all the statistics, you just state reports, that kind of thing. That would be really formal and objective. So in terms of language, if you're going to be discussing that, you should be thinking in terms of informal or formal, right? And another big thing is inclusive language, right? You can get hints from that. If you see inclusive language, you can say, okay, he's trying to make some kind of emotional appeal, right? So the most often cited thing is using the word we, right? Using the word we, usually it has to do with, I mean, if you see that the writer is a president, right? They talk about we a lot. Why? Because they want that sense of responsibility and sense of solidarity shared with the audience, right? It's not just America, where it's not looking at America from like a distant point of view. It's you're in this too with us, right? This is a victory for us, like it's us Americans, right? You the readers are also in this problem, kind of thing, right? So there's that. Okay, so. Okay, is it okay for me to erase this? Good. Okay, so do you have any questions before we go on to the essays? Okay, good. So I'm gonna erase this. All right, so let's go to one of the essays. Let's just take a look. Okay, in the foreword to blah, 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 blah. Okay, good, I like this, okay. Of a photographic journey, okay, so in this article, that's basically what it's doing, and I like it, it's very clean. Former United States President Jimmy Carter argues that, and then we're going to have the main point, the Arctic National Refuge should not be developed for industry. Okay, so I like what you did. You just stated the prompt verbatim, right? You just, no, not the prompt, the main point. The main point of the prompt verbatim. It's okay, yeah? Yeah, it's okay. And then what are you going to do? You're going to talk about the 3 techniques. He builds an effective argument by using visual imagery. Okay, good. Visual imagery. Good. So it's not, when it comes to imagery, it pertains to 5 senses, right? But specifically, you're just going to mention visual imagery, I guess. That's that's good. Juxtapositions. Okay, good. This is really up to you, whether you want to specify juxtapositions or not, whether you want to say juxtaposition of contrasting ideas, if you want to say that, juxtaposition of evidence, juxtaposition of expert opinion. It's up to you, but you chose not to use it here. That's okay. And then, and personal pronouns. Okay, so this one I think is a little bit too much. A little bit too specific. I'm just worried that you're not going to have enough to write about. So instead of saying personal pronouns, you could have just said language, right? Language, or you could have just said diction. Okay. If you said that, then you could have potentially included some other points. But personal pronouns, that's going to restrict you I'm not saying this is wrong. Okay, I'm not saying this is wrong. It's okay as long as your third paragraph has enough to talk about. I would be okay with this. Okay, what do I mean enough? Well, I mean your third paragraph, ideally, it should be claim, reason, consequence, and then reason, consequence. So basically, I want to see 2 instances of quotes. And this should be pretty substantial in terms of advancing the author's argument. So if they're pretty substantial and not so trivial, I would be happy. But if it's too specific, maybe expand the scope a little bit more. Give yourself a little bit more breathing room. So let's take a look, especially in the beginning. Okay, so I don't know why you would start the sentence with especially in the beginning. Okay, I mean, because the emphasis is on especially in the beginning if you start off the sentence like this. So, I mean, Carter uses visual imagery to show blah, 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 to be taken away. And then if you really want to say especially in the beginning, just include it at the end of the sentence. But I still wouldn't use the wording especially in the beginning because it hints at the fact that you're going to be talking about some other instances also. That's what it's implying. So, I mean, not especially in the beginning, just say in the beginning and also include that at the end of the sentence, right? Okay, so visual imagery to show the audience the beauty of the refuge. Okay, so I like this, okay? So you rephrase this, the beauty of the refuge. You rephrased what basically Carter was trying to convey in the first paragraph. So that's good, I like it. It's really good, okay? He writes about how he studied the brilliant mosaic of blah, 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 blah. Okay, good. So this is indeed visual imagery. And state that there is, okay, so what I like here is you're not just quoting the entire bit, you're paraphrasing this. So this is good. And states that there is a timeless quality, okay, about this great land. No, this is wrong. You shouldn't be quoting this part like this. Why? Because it's not visual imagery, okay? It's not visual imagery. What you could have done is something like this. In order to stress the timeless quality about this great land, he writes about how he studied blah, 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 blah. Okay? You see what I mean? Because this is rather his purpose, right? He wants to get this point across, right? That there's a timeless quality about this great land. And this is not imagery. Right? But you actually quoted this part in a parallel structure, right? Saying, okay, he does this and he does this. But this is not visual imagery. You see what I mean, right? So you should have said something like, in order to stress, in order to underline the timeless quality about the land, he writes about how he studied the brilliant mosaic, blah, 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 blah. Then it's good, right? Okay. So we have the quote. Now I want to start talking about the consequence. The elaborate details Carter wrote, such as, okay, so it's not, so details is a little bit too vague, okay? So elaborate details, well, instead of saying elaborate details, you should have rephrased imagery, right? So this vivid depiction of the wildlife or something like that. This vivid depiction of the wildlife Carter includes such as blah, 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 serve to express a beauty. Okay, good. This rephrase is kind of off. Okay, so this rephrase is kind of off. It's not elaborate details. Okay, so it's not a very apt rephrase of the visual imagery that you're trying to say. So not that. Serve to express a beauty and have positive connotations. Okay, so this is too vague. This is too vague, but I want to see if you expand on it in the next sentence. It is likely that Carter wanted to portray the tundra as something breathtaking so that the audience can see what is about to be lost. The language is, so you remember when we were doing writing, on the writing section, you don't want to make your essay sound too informal, right? So this is an instance of very informal language, right? So rather than say so that the audience can see what is about to be lost, so that the audience can viscerally experience the potential loss or something like that. So you want to change the wording here, okay? But I'm not so fond of this because you need to go further than this. You need to talk about that specific instance, right? It's fine. It's not technically incorrect, but I'm saying it could be more specific than this, okay? Serve to express a beauty. Well, you can elaborate on that. It's talking about the natural beauty, right? Natural beauties of life, and by discussing the plants, the author tries to paint a picture in the reader's head, in the reader's mind, about the beautiful scenery or something like that, right? So you want to be a little bit more specific here rather than just say beauty and positive connotation. Okay, so let's move on. He further writes that there was a timeless quality. Okay, so again, this is wrong, right? Why? Because this has nothing to do with visual imagery, which indicates that refuge is quite special considering its natural beauty. Okay, so this one is technically wrong. With this quote, right? You should have used some other quote, right? With the visual aspects of the refuge described, it is easier for the audience to understand why the refuge should not be altered. Okay, so I like this. So this is talking about the future, right? So you're saying this serves as a foundation upon which the argument is going to be built, and that's okay. I can let this go. Okay, but again, why the refuge should not be altered? The audience to understand why the refuge should not be altered. You could have worded this better. So you always want to try to sound very formal. Instead of as to understand the rationale behind the undesirability of altering the refuge or something like that, right? So that's okay. Let's go to the next paragraph. So this is the part where you're going to be discussing the juxtaposition. Okay, so juxtaposition. It says Carter also juxtaposes between. Well, you can't say juxtaposes between. You juxtapose an object, right? You can say juxtapose A with B, right? That's how you use the word juxtapose. You don't say juxtaposes between. Okay, so this is wrong. The good memories he has of the refuge. Okay, so the good memories he has of the refuge. Okay, so. I guess you should rephrase this because this sounds a little bit too informal. Instead of saying the good memories he has of the refuge, right? And this he has of the refuge. This is kind of wordy. It just looks a little bit wordy. So it's not the best writing. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it could be improved upon. Okay, and the thought of tragedy that would ensue if the industry was allowed on the refuge to demonstrate to the audience the tremendous loss. What? Okay. Well, this is a little bit wordy, but thought. Okay, so he juxtaposes the good memories and the thought and the potential tragedy, right? I mean, the thought of tragedy sounds a little bit off. You could have said the potential tragedy that would ensue if the industry was allowed on the refuge. Okay, to demonstrate to the audience the tremendous loss that will be. Okay, so it's not. Okay, so it's not. He's not necessarily demonstrating anything. He would. I mean, you can say something like to emphasize, right? Emphasize, underline, underscore. Underline, underscore. Or bring attention to. So he's not necessarily demonstrating anything, right? He's not doing like a demonstration, right? He's not doing like a demonstration of a magic trick or whatever, right? In the second and third, okay, so but this sentence is good. So he's so you chose to actually give us a taste on the consequence. Right? So To demonstrate to the audience the tremendous loss that will be faced. So this is technically a consequence, and that's okay. You can do that as long as you elaborate on it a little bit more after you quote the bit. Okay, so let's take a look here. In the second and third paragraph, Carter describes parts of his trip, blah blah blah, as blah blah blah. Okay, good. Okay, good. So this is you talking about this, the good memories, right? However, he states that he is saddened to think of the tragedy. Okay. However, but you're talking. I thought you were talking about the juxtaposition. Then you wouldn't use the word however. You would say something like he then immediately moves on to, right? That's what a juxtaposition is, right? So after talking about the quote unquote good memories, he immediately moves on to the tragedy. He immediately moves on to discussing the tragedy. That's how you would restate the juxtaposition, right? But if you just say, however, he states that, we don't know if this is a juxtaposition. You know what I mean? So you could have worked on this sentence. There is an obvious difference shown as the words used by. Okay, so obvious difference, but I wouldn't say difference. I would more say contrast. Okay, and not obvious contrast, but more like a stark contrast. It's not a question of whether it's obvious or not. It's a question of how different it is, right? Shown as the words used by Carter to describe the refuge during his trip, such as unforgettable and humbling, contain positive connotations, while the word for potential blah 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 have negative connotations, such as tragedy and consumed. Okay, but you can't just end here. You can't just say positive connotation and negative connotation. You need to discuss why this is positive, why this is negative. Okay, it seems obvious to you, but it's not obvious. Okay, you need to discuss why is this positive? Why is this negative, right? Okay? You need to discuss that. You need to, so in that process, you're forced to think about what the author is saying, and that's going to give you reading points, and you're going to make that connection more obvious, okay? So, tragedy, right? This is how he specifically frames it, right? For some people it might not be a tragedy, but so you should be discussing that in a little bit more detail, okay? Instead of just saying negative connotations. I don't like positive connotation and negative connotation. You can start off with that, but you need to elaborate on that a little bit more and talk about how specifically that instills a positive sense in the readers. You think that's obvious, but it's not obvious, okay? At least you need to show that in your writing. Why is this positive? Why is this positive? Well, let's think about that. Okay, well, unforgettable and humbling, right? Unforgettable and humbling. Yes, it has positive connotations, but elaborate on that a little bit more and say, say something like, depicting his trip framing his trip in such a way invites the reader to join in on his positive emotions that he felt during his trip, and gets the reader to indirectly experience that trip or something like that, right? So discuss that, right? And by contrasting them, the audience is able to be clearly shown the different potential outcomes. No, this is wrong. I don't see two different outcomes. I only see one outcome, right? I only see the potential tragedy. But what happens if it's not intruded upon? He doesn't discuss the positive outcome, the potential positive outcome. So this is technically wrong. Of the refuge's future, with one being good and okay. So this is not enough. Okay, because he doesn't describe it in terms of outcomes. Right? He only discusses one outcome. He only discusses the potential tragedy, right? He doesn't talk about what the positive outcome is. You can't say there's an outcome in that, okay? The refuge from Carter's trip has a more positive description that can resonate with the readers more than the refuge with industrial facilities. Yes, okay, more positive, but again, you're using the word positive. This needs to be elaborated upon, right? As a result, the audience will more likely want to see the refuge left untouched. No, I said you can't do this. Never ever do this. The audience will. No, you don't know that. How do you know that? Okay? You guys know what I'm saying, right? You can't say the audience will do something. You're not a prophet, right? You can't make such prophecies. Okay? I mean, the author can try to do this, right? The author can seek to do this. The audience may feel like this, right? But they will, I mean, you don't know about if they will be more likely to see. Do you know? I mean, some people might not even understand this passage. How do you know they will? Okay, you can't say this, right? It's logically incorrect. All right, so next part. To conclude his argument, Carter uses personal pronouns, okay, good, to bring the audience into his cause of, okay, so instead of saying bring the audience into his cause, maybe use some other word, right? What can potentially be some other word that you can use? Carter uses personal pronouns to invite the readers to, I mean, that can be like, bring the audience into is a little bit, I mean, it's too wordy a little bit, right? You can just say invite the audience into his cause of making efforts to preserve the refuge. 7th paragraph repeatedly says we, okay? And then okay, so this is we, blah, 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 we, blah, 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 okay. Okay, good. So this, okay, so you just quoted it. Let's see your consequences. By addressing the audience and himself to participate in protecting the refuge, builds a connection between him and the readers, okay, to make the cause approachable. No. Nope, this is wrong. Just because someone says we does not make the cause approachable, right? Approachable means, oh, I think I can do that. No, he's not trying to make it approachable. He's trying to stress that sense of responsibility, right? It's not a matter of making it approachable. So this is a wrong point. With his previous paragraphs having a grim tone about blah, 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 Carter brings hope to the audience by stating some of the things they can do to help. Okay, well, what can they do? Well, okay, I get what you're saying, but this is technically incorrect, right? Just because he can okay. So this point, we can easily conserve more that amount by driving more fuel efficient vehicles. Okay, he's not necessarily saying, hey, this is really easy to do. No, this point was actually serving the point that it's not worth it. Right? It's not worth to make that industrial development. That's why he was talking about this. He was saying like, hey, that's only 1 to 2%. Hey, if everybody drove like fuel efficient vehicles, this would be negated right away. Right? It was that point. So this is an instance of you getting carried away because of a certain detail. Right? So you read that detail wrong, and this could potentially cost you some analysis points. Let's take a look. Furthermore, Carter writes as if the refuge belongs to all Americans. It will be a grand triumph for America if we can preserve blah, blah, blah. Okay, good, blah, 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 blah. All right, good. All right. Okay, so I see another quote here, right? So I mean, this is the appeal to their patriotism and stuff like that. I think you're trying to discuss that. And these lines emphasizes how the refuge will be a grand triumph if Americans connect this argument with, to also connect this argument with this audience. Okay, so is this your point? I hope this is elaborated upon here. He indicates that the refuge belongs to the readers. Okay, so good. Okay, so I see you try to use to indicate. That's good. And it belongs to the readers, and it is their responsibility to protect. Okay, good. Okay, so you kind of lost me here, but this was elaborated upon here, so it's okay. As a result, it invites the audience to make a change for themselves and the future, which shows. Okay. Okay. So it invites the readers to make a change. Well, it's. I mean, I would, I mean, to be really nitty gritty about this, I would say invite the audience to join in on this cause rather than he's not necessarily inviting them to do something. He's saying, hey, let us do this together. That's what he's doing. So join in to make a change for themselves, blah, 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 which shows that Carter does not want to protect the refuge for himself, not only for himself, but for all, right? So you don't know. I mean, you're just blatantly denying he's not doing it for himself, but you don't know that. Well, you can say it's not only just for him, it's for other people also. So that's how you should have framed it. Okay, well, all in all, good job. It's good. It's good. And just be sure to mention all the points in a I mean, like there were some reading problems. Like I could see some reading problems. What you could do is just don't get carried away with the details so much when you're reading. Okay, I saw that instance of you saying, he's trying to make this approachable, right? But it wasn't about making this cause approachable, right? He was saying we should do this together, right? Okay, so yeah, but the writing, the structure of it especially, I liked it. Okay, so let's take a look at another one. This one says Carter effectively builds his argument. Okay, you want to mention the paragraph. I mean, not the paragraph, the name of the passage. Okay, in blah blah blah, Carter effectively builds his argument that should not be developed. Okay, so good. By employing imagery, various juxtapositions, and connotative diction. Okay, good. Just make sure you mention the passage. Okay, I mean, because if you don't mention the passage, that technically doesn't make any sense. Okay, you can't assume the readers know anything, right? I mean, if you just hand this essay to someone, what are they going to say? Well, where, right? So you need to be okay. I'm not trying to like just be too nitpicky about this, but this is actually a valid point, right? If you hand your essay in somewhere, they're going to say, well, what do you mean? I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about. He effectively builds his argument. What, where, right? So you need to mention the passage always. Okay? So let's take a look here. Carter starts off his argument by his use of sensuous. Okay, I would rather go with some other word here, and I mean, you could say something like just brilliant, right? Brilliant or splendid. I mean, just some word that you were. It's not sensuous. Okay, so this word a little bit out of place here. Okay, so you just mentioned the technique here. That's good. So I want to see the quote. In the first two paragraphs, the author describes his own experience at this magnificent area where, okay, good. Adding that he and his wife, okay, good. Okay, good. So this whole thing, paraphrase plus quote, good. Very good. Okay, so, and then it says, in his portrayal of the refuge, Carter attempts to depict the refuge in the reader's mind vividly. Okay, so I would take this as a short sentence, right? So I want you to elaborate on this by drawing us, the readers, okay, into his experience indirectly. You don't know this, okay? You don't know this. By attempting to, you need to say by attempting to draw us. Because you don't know if he drew in the audience or not. Okay, you know he tried, but you can't say he did. Make sure of that. Okay, so that's I mean, okay. So again, you guys might think I'm being too nitpicky, but no, it's not. I'm just being logical. That's how you should approach every essay, right? I mean, those are logical flaws. Right? If you say that he draws us in, How do you know that? How do you know if he drew everybody in? I mean, he tries to draw everybody in, right? Indirectly, the author wants us to acknowledge and empathize with him that these are the valuable aspects of nature. Okay, good. And readers are more likely to, and the readers are, you can say something like thereby. The readers are thereby, as a result, more likely to concur with the assertion Carter is trying to accomplish eventually. And I guess after this colon is the claim, we ought to maintain the faith, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so instead of saying this, you could have said concur with the assertion that is about to follow in the next paragraphs, right? Concur with the assertions that will follow in the next paragraphs or something like that. Instead of just mentioning this, that's okay, because this paragraph, this first paragraph, you're technically not discussing this point, right? This point does not show up until later, right? So you could say that. Furthermore, readers can find credence with the author's argument from his detailed description. The readers would know that Carter has indeed been to the place. Okay, good. And can be an eyewitness, and can be an eyewitness. I mean, you can say and is an eyewitness of the presence of vitality and vigorousness in the refuge. Okay, good. I really like this point. Okay, so this is really good. So I see what. Okay, so basically it's structured like this. So you have this. So you mentioned this technique, and then you have a quote. You discuss the consequence, right? And you mentioned another consequence. That's good. Okay, so it's fine, right? He builds his argument for the presentation of art the refuge by evoking the view of the wilderness that demonstrates the timeless quality about this great land. Okay, so this lively depiction acts as a cornerstone. Okay, good. And you tied this into the main idea also. Okay, so this is really good. So just minus just a few things. Minus just a few things with the wording and stuff. This is exactly what I want. Okay, so you quoted it, and you even discussed two consequences, right? So you discussed two consequences, and then at the very end, you tied it to the main point also. So this is really good. Okay. Let's go to the next part. Furthers his argument by juxtaposing sentences and paragraphs. Okay, in the third paragraph, Carter explains. Okay, you don't explain about something, you just explain something, right? Or you explain that, or whatever, right? So Carter explains one of the most blah, 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 blah. Okay, but he doesn't explain it. So explain is literally, you guys know what it is, 설명, right? But he's not 설명이 something, he's depicting it, right? He's portraying it, right? So that would be a better word, okay? So 설명 means like someone doesn't understand something and you explain it to them, right? You explain the mechanism or something like that. But this one, he's just describing his experience, okay? One of the most unforgettable and humbling experiences and his first-hand encounter where he witnessed the sweep becoming flooded with life, okay? Subsequently, okay, good. By you saying subsequently, you're bringing this idea of juxtaposition. In the next paragraph, he claims that tragedy might occur. Okay, good. By blah, 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 blah. Okay, good. Placing the two paragraphs accentuates, okay, this is a good word. Good. Accentuates the contrast between the desirable qualities that need to be preserved and what are not. No. Okay. Well, so if you say what are not, you're basically saying you're juxtaposing what needs to be preserved and what doesn't need to be preserved. He didn't necessarily talk about, okay, I know that you meant all the like pipelines and stuff like that here, but you shouldn't present that this is a wrong rephrase of that bit, okay? because I mean, it's not something that should not be preserved, right? And I mean, it's not a matter of you should preserve this or not when it comes to the development, right? After he establishes the extraordinary wilderness and wildlife values of the Arctic refuge as an idea that is recognized by blah, 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 he proceeds to present the readers with specific instances in which both parties seek to preserve its unique wildlife. Okay, so you're just explaining. So I want to see where this goes. Blah blah blah. President Eisenhower established blah blah blah, and subsequently President Carter blah blah blah. Okay, when he states that both parties were concerned with the matter regarding wildlife and the refuge. Okay, so good. So you're just about. So this is basically a rephrase, and you're about to discuss the consequence. This is what I like to see. The author attempts to indicate that it was not a political issue. Okay, I guess this is a short sentence just introducing it. I guess you want to elaborate on that a little bit more, but I would say this is a little bit insufficient. Like, not a political issue. It's not incorrect, but it's not technically correct either. You would say, I mean, he's not saying it's not a political issue. He's saying it's an issue that both parties would agree on, right? We don't know if it's not political. Okay, I see what you mean, but he's just saying, yeah, even if it is political, he's saying both parties would agree with it, right? Positioning two particular occasions in which both sides endeavor to preserve the site is an appeal to emotion. Why is that an appeal to emotion? Okay, so this concept, okay, let me see your explanation. Nowadays, it is generally known that both parties, blah, 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 is unusual. Aware of the widespread thought, Carter uses it to maximize the... Okay, so this is not... Okay, so him saying both parties would agree on that, it's not necessarily appealing to your emotions. Do you feel anything if you say both parties would agree on it? Do you feel joy? No, he's just, it doesn't have to do with anything emotional. Aware of the widespread thought, Carter uses it to maximize the importance of preservation by saying that there was consensus between the two opposing sides on the refuge. So this is an idea. So I mean, rather than you saying emotional appeal, you should have expanded on this point a little bit more. But okay, that's good. Okay, so good job. Good. This paragraph was good. I mean, I'm not saying this paragraph is bad, but it had some errors. This paragraph did have some minor issues, but it was pretty good. Okay. Okay. So any questions so far? Okay. If not, we're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna come back and take a look at another prompt. We'll take a look at a prompt, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay. So take a break. We'll come back soon. Oh, sorry. Okay, let's take a look at this prompt. So the title is Foreign News at a Crisis Point, so it's probably going to be some kind of problem, right? But if you turn to the next page, so the first thing that you want to do, you want to turn to the next page, right? Turn to the next page, please. Okay, take a look at the main point. It says, write an essay in which you explain how he builds an argument to persuade his audience that news organizations should increase the amount of professional foreign news coverage provided to Americans. Okay, so we need foreign news coverage. We need to increase this, right? So we need to talk more about foreign news. That's what the point is, okay? So it's a little bit, I guess it could be a little bit hard. The prompt could be a little bit harder than the other ones because it's a little bit more technical, right? It's not just, oh, we should preserve this wildlife refuge, right? So it's not that. It's a little bit more complicated. So let's take a look at the passage. So starting, okay, so the point is we should increase foreign news coverage. Okay, so this is the point. Let's take a look. Back in 2003, American Journalism Review produced a census of foreign correspondents then employed by newspaper based in the United States. Okay, so this is a reputable organization, I guess, right? So this is a reputable organization, and they made a census. They made a report, kind of a study of that based in the United States, and found 307 full-time people. Okay, do you know if this is high or no? High or low? I don't know. I don't know if this is a lot or no. Okay. When AJR repeated the exercise in the summer of 2011, the count had dropped to 234. Okay, then you can see what he's trying to say, right? So he's trying to say that there's been a decrease. So according to AJR, a reputable organization, there has been a decrease. That's what he's trying to say. And even that number was significantly inflated by the inclusion of contract writers. Okay, so that number refers to 235, but he's saying this is inflated. So it's possibly less than this, right? So it's less than this. I don't know, but let's just say 200, right? So that's like a 33% decrease almost, right? Anyway, so it says in the next part, intervening 8 years, 20 American news organizations had entirely eliminated their foreign bureaus. Okay, so we see what's happening here, right? So we see a decrease in foreign correspondence, right? We see a decrease in foreign correspondence, and we see the elimination of foreign bureaus. So something that has to do with foreign news, right? It decreased and it's gone, right? Okay, how's the tone here? Is it formal or informal? Okay, very formal, right? So unlike the Bruni passage, for example, right? As an uncle, I'm pretty inconsistent, right? It's not one of those, right? So it's a very formal article, and you can discuss that. You can say, hey, it's talking in a very objective, in an objective point of view, right? It mentions something that's only tangible, right? He's not talking about any kind of opinion or something like that. It's based on facts, right? AJR's census, right? AJR census, and I mean, can you deny this? I mean, no one can deny this, right? It's a fact, right? So that's what he's primarily relying on for now, right? Okay, and then it says the same AJR survey zeroed in on a representative sampling of American papers from across the country and found that the space devoted to foreign news had shrunk by 53%. Okay, so he's doing, so all of these paragraphs is dedicated to talking about the problem. The problem is we don't have any foreign news coverage, like not any, but there's a significant decrease in the foreign, potentially in foreign news coverage, right? That's what he wants to point out. And how does he do it? Through his formal tone, right? Formal tone, and he's relying on this reputable organization, AJR, right? We don't know what this organization is, but it does indeed sound very professional, right? Okay, so that's very simple. So I guess we need to dedicate our first paragraph to discussing this point, right? That it's formal, and he relies on these. I mean, yeah. So, but I mean, technically speaking, he just didn't mention one fact, right? It's a combination of three facts, right? So fact one, fact two, fact three, right? So evidence. So you can talk about his formal tone and his evidence potentially in the first three paragraphs. And then let's go to the next paragraph. It says, all of this decline was playing out at a time when the U.S. was embroiled in two overseas wars with hundreds of thousands of Americans deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, so this decline coincided, like it happened in the same time, meaning it happened in the same time, right? So it happened while we had wars going on. I mean, naturally, you would think if we have overseas wars going on, we would need more foreign coverage, right? But he's saying, you know, like this decline happened when there was wars. Okay, so he's bringing this element in, and then he's saying it was happening as domestic policies grappled with the merits and consequences of a global war on terror, as a great recession was blamed in part on global imbalances in saving, and as world heroes debated a global trade treaty and pacts aimed at addressing climate change. So what is he saying here? So basically he's saying a lot of stuff was happening globally, right? So there were a lot of global events happening that needed coverage, but all the while, you know, foreign correspondence and those kinds of things were decreasing, right? It unfolded as American workers heard increasingly that their wages and job security were under assault by competition from counterparts on the other side of the oceans. So this paragraph is dedicated to that coincidence, right? What's happening together? These global events, like these very important global events that could potentially affect Americans, was happening. But at the same time, what else was happening? At the same time, we're not necessarily covering foreign news, right? So I mean, he didn't say anything so far, but if anything, this is like a logical appeal. Do you see that it's a logical appeal? He's saying, yeah, I mean, there was this, and this happened along with this, right? So it's an appeal to logic. It's not an appeal to authority or emotion or anything. And then, but he sums it up here. In short, news of the world is becoming palpably more relevant to the day-to-day experience of American readers, and it is rapidly disappearing. Okay, so he points it out here very openly, the correlation, right? So what should naturally happen? I mean, this plays on our expectation versus reality, right? I mean, if stuff is happening abroad that can potentially affect American readers, I would imagine it would have to go up. That's my expectation, right? Foreign news coverage would have to go up. But what's actually happening? It's actually decreasing. It's declining. So that's an undesirable thing that's happening. So he dedicates these 5 paragraphs to discuss this problem, right? So he discusses his problems. Let's see where he goes from here. Yet the same forces that have assailed print media, eroding foreign news, along the way, may be fashioning a useful response. Okay. Well, okay. So the same forces. So there are some forces that have assailed, meaning attacked, print media. Okay. So they attack print media, eroding foreign news, hurting foreign news along the way, may be fashioning a useful response. Okay. So what is that useful response? Several nonprofit outlets have popped up to finance foreign reporting, and a for-profit outfit, Global Post, has dispatched a team of 18 senior correspondents to the field, supplemented by dozens of stringers and freelancers. Okay, so I guess there is something useful happening, right? So there is a little bit of a change, right? So something that could potentially increase the foreign coverage. And then it says, we are intent on forging fresh platforms for user-generated content, testimonials, snapshots, and video clips from readers documenting issues in need of attention. Okay, so now he's talking about us, right? But does this include the readers? No. It's talking about what they are doing, this group is doing, right? So the group's intention is to do this, right? They want to make platforms, right? Platforms for, what's a platform? Well, it's YouTube's a platform for user-generated videos, right? You know what I mean? Okay. Naver Shopping is a platform for individual sellers, right? You can sell your stuff there. Okay, so they want to make a platform for user-generated content, right? So made by users. Testimonials, snapshots, and video clips. So what's happening right now? Foreign news coverage is going down and that kind of thing, but what are they trying to do? They want to make a platform for user-generated content, right? So users are trying to do this. Too often, these sorts of efforts wind up feeling marginal or even patronizing. Dear peasant, here's your chance to speak to the pros about what's happening in your tiny little corner of the world. Okay, so too often, these sorts of efforts, what are these sorts of efforts? Making that platform for users, right? So instead of like journalists writing the news or whatever, it's the users making videos and saying, hey, this is what's happening. Hey, look at what's happening in Korea. Look at what's happening with the coronavirus in Korea. And then they're using their phones to do it, right? So he's talking about that kind of platform. But, sometimes he says, hey, this is kind of looked down upon sometimes, right? Hey, this feels sometimes marginal or patronizing, right? And then it says, we see user-generated content as a genuine reporting tool. But, right? So he's saying, yeah, this is what the opponents sometimes say, right? The opponents say this kind of thing is really marginal, but, actually this is a genuine reporting tool, right? And one that operates on the premise that we can only be in so many places at once. Crowdsourcing is a fundamental advantage of the web. Okay, so what is he doing? This is his solution. This is his solution to the problem, right? What was the problem? Foreign news coverage decreasing. But what does he want to do? He wants to crowdsource, right? He wants to rely on the users to provide some news. That's basically what it's saying, I guess, right? So why not embrace it as a means of piecing together a broader and more textured understanding of events? Okay, so this is his solution. I mean, he uses now he's actually shoving his main points into the reader's face, right? With the rhetorical question, hey, wouldn't this make more sense, right? Well, this is happening. If we make this platform, wouldn't it make sense, right? Okay, so next part. We all know the power of Twitter, Facebook, and other forms of social media to connect readers in one place with the images and impressions from situations unfolding far away. We know, okay, so okay, so now he's saying, hey, you guys all know this, right? You guys know the power of this. So this is how he's, I guess this is like repetition, right? We all know this. We know this, right? Something that the readers will agree. So he's kind of saying like, you know, this is an accepted fact. Everybody knows that Facebook, Twitter, and all of that is pretty powerful, and you guys know that. Facts and insights reside on foreign media, social media, wanting to be harvested by the digitally literate contemporary correspondent, right? Okay, so we all have, I mean, this is like a treasure mine for contemporary correspondents, right? They look to social media and they want to mine information, they want to get certain news out of it. And yet those of us who have been engaged in foreign reporting for many years will confess to unease over many of the developments unfolding online. Okay, so some people are not going to be easy, not so happy about this. They're a little bit uneasy about this. Even as we recognize the trends are as unstoppable as globalization of the weather. Too often, it seems as if professional foreign correspondents, the people paid to use their expertise while serving as information filters, are being replaced, right? So some people feel unease, right? Hey, what do I do now? I'm a journalist, right? I'm a journalist, but you know, everybody's like just taking videos of the events and stuff like that. It seems like they're taking my place, kind of thing, right? That's what it feels like to these people, right? Citizen journalists function as funnels, pouring insight along with speculation, propaganda, and other white noise into the mix, right? Okay, so foreign reporting. So people who've been involved in foreign reporting, they can say something like, hey, you know, if we rely on civilians for these kinds of reports, there could be propaganda, right? It could be really biased, and it could be they could guess a lot of things, right? We don't want that. We can celebrate the democratization of media, the breakdown of monopolies, the rise of innovative means of telling stories, and the inclusion of a diversity of voices, and still ask whether the results are making us better informed. Indeed, we have a professional responsibility to continually ask that question while seeking to engineer new models. Okay, so you know, he's saying we still need to be balanced. We still need to ask those questions even as we adopt new models. We need to embrace the present and gear for the future. Okay, so we need to embrace the future and prepare for the future. These are days in which newsrooms simply must be entrepreneurial and creative. Okay, so this is kind of his point, right? So at the very beginning, so let's go back. Let's backtrack a little bit. So in the beginning, he was saying, yeah, a lot of things are happening, but you know, foreign news coverage is decreasing. But at the same time, we're trying to work on these platforms in which user-generated content would provide news to people, kind of thing, right? That makes this a particularly interesting time to be doing the work, but it also requires forthright attention to a central demand. We need to put back what the internet has taken away. We need to, I mean, okay, so like a thing that he does is we. So who are we? So, well, first of all, they're, I guess, Americans, right? So he's including all the Americans, and so he's saying like, we have a responsibility to do something about this. Well, isn't it your job? I mean, I can say something like, hey, it's the journalist's job, but no, he doesn't present it that way. He's saying it's our job to do this. We need to figure out a way to make news accessible, but while at the same time, asking the right questions and being balanced and stuff like that, right? We need to re-examine and update how we gather information and how we engage readers while retaining the core values of serious-minded journalism, right? So he wants serious-minded journalism, but at the same time, he wants to engage readers, right? So he wants to do both things. This will not be easy, but the alternative, accepting ignorance, is simply not an option, right? So, you know, but he'd rather do something about this than not, right? If we just sit, you know, everybody's not going to know about anything, right? The foreign news, right? And stuff like that, while all these important stuff is happening all around the world. But so what he wants to do is, you know, he wants to work on this new platform and stuff like that. But at the same time, he wants to ask the right questions and be balanced and have some professional journalism. Okay, well, so what's like a main thing? So I mean this article is quite different from the other articles that we've seen in the sense that it sounds very professional, right? He doesn't use any kind of like informal language, right? Although he uses the word we and stuff like that, it still sounds very professional. We can see that he's very knowledgeable in this area, right? So he's very insightful. He's very insightful, and he's aware of the facts that are going on. He presents his opinion with evidence, right? And I mean, like in the beginning, he starts off with some facts that you can't deny, and I mean, as always, he uses diction, right? I mean, everybody uses diction, like word choices, specific word choices to describe a problem and to describe some positivity, right? So something like the things that he views in a positive light, and that kind of thing, right? Okay, so why don't we just jump right to the essay and see what one of the essays how it tackles this issue. So because it might seem a little bit difficult for you guys to see what the actual techniques are, how you can incorporate that in your essay. So let's take a look. Okay, so it says in this article, Goodman eloquently argues the point that, okay, and then we have the main point, right? Main point, a little bit with with a little bit of something added onto it. Goodman builds his argument by using facts and evidence. Okay, so I'm not surprised, right? So facts and evidence, yeah, he used a lot of these. Addressing the counter-argument, yeah, so we've seen this also, right? So some people might say, hey, isn't this kind of gonna be like propaganda and that kind of thing? He addresses the counter-arguments and couching it all in persuasive and compelling language. Okay, good, right? So facts and evidence, addressing counter-arguments, and language, right? So language is going to be, I guess, a little bit broad. It's going to be discussing the entire passage, encompassing the entire passage, right? So I guess the first paragraph is going to be about fact and evidence. Let's take a look how he does it. Goodman begins the article by bombarding the reader. Okay, so this is very good, bombarding, right? These kinds of words can add color to your essay, right? So instead of just saying like he states, you see, if you say bombard, it's like, oh, he gives us a lot of facts in the beginning. So it's a good word choice that you can use that can potentially boost your writing score. So he bombards the readers with facts and statistics. Yeah, he does in the beginning, right? So a common trap that you can fall into when you say fact and evidence is you might end up just saying, hey, this helps his argument. How does facts and evidence help his argument? You don't answer that. Like, that's a problem that a lot of students come across, right? So don't fall into that trap. If you just say facts and evidence and you say that just helps his argument, that's not doing anything, right? So you need to be very specific, especially when you're discussing like statistics or something like that. It boosts his credibility. I mean, yeah, it's true, but in what sense, right? While he's discussing what, you need to describe the specifics, okay? So let's see if he touches upon that. He states that according to a census concluded by blah, 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 the number blah, 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 and it dropped blah, 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 blah. Okay, so he just paraphrased this entire thing, but this is something that I wouldn't do, okay? I would include quotes, right? I want to mix it up with quotes. I don't want to paraphrase the entire thing. Although, if you could paraphrase something entirely, these would be the instances in which you would do it. But I mean, I wouldn't. I personally, I always want to mix it up with my paraphrase version and some other quotes. And then it says, in addition, the AJR survey, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so what did he do? So here he included the quotes, and we know what they are, right? So he's talking about the point where he's talking about the decline in foreign news coverage, right? So this was in the very beginning. And this is good. This is also something that we want to do, right? Like we always said, the first paragraph of your essay should always discuss the first two paragraphs, first one or two paragraphs of the prompts. In this case, it would be like up to like 3 or 4 paragraphs because, you know, he's been going on about this. I mean, he goes on and on about this problem, presenting facts and stuff. So we can discuss all that. Did he discuss the consequence yet? No. Okay. So I want him to discuss the consequence. Okay. So let's see what he does. So beginning the article with all of these facts and figures, Figures? Does he? Well, anyway, has a couple of strengthening effects on Goodman's argument. Okay, so this is just him starting it off, right? So he says, yeah, okay, so it has a strengthening effect. So I feel like you're going to be discussing this in length. So I like this. It's really good. Okay, so let's see what the effects are. First, wow. Okay, so I guess he's going to be talking about several effects, how this is going to strengthen it. So this is really, really good. He's going into real detail, talking about how it strengthens its point, how the facts strengthen his point of view. First, by starting off with hard evidence, Goodman lays the ground. Okay, so starting out with hard evidence, this is a rephrased version of what he does, right? Rephrased version of what he does. Goodman lays the groundwork of his own credibility. Okay, good. Groundwork of his own credibility. Okay, so, but I want you to elaborate on this a little bit more. What do you mean, lay the groundwork of your own credibility? He's not just writing an opinion piece. His opinion is backed by truth. Yes. Yeah. That's what it is. That's what I want, guys. Does it seem obvious? Well, it's not so obvious if you don't write it. Okay? So you need to talk about this, right? Instead of, just starting off with his opinion, he starts off with talking about something that you can't deny, right? I mean, a lot of you think that's just too obvious to mention, but you don't mention it. But, if you don't mention it, you're not going to get the analysis point. So this is good. Okay, so this is talking about the future, right? So this is the future consequence, right? What impact this is going to have on the readers. This will bring the readers on board and make them more likely to trust everything else he says. Very good. This is exactly what I want, right? Okay, good. So this is solid. I mean, you could have even ended here, right? I mean, I mean, like he has more, but you could have just ended it here, and it would still be pretty solid. What about next? Second, because Goodman presents these facts without much explaining and interpreting, the reader is forced to do the math herself. Okay. Okay. So the reader is forced to do the math herself. Okay. So what's the impact of that? I don't know what the impact of that is. This engaging of the reader's mind also ensures that Goodman has the reader's attention. Wow, that's something that I haven't thought about, but that's actually true, right? Can you deny this? No, I don't think so, right? I mean, we needed to think about that while we were reading, right? He just didn't make it too explicit. He was just presenting the facts. So while I'm reading, I was just like, okay, so I'm going to take in the facts. And, okay, so here's a decline, and that kind of thing, right? So it grabs the reader's attention. When the reader does the math to find a drop of 73 blah, 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 she will find herself predisposed to agree with Goodman's call for more professional news reporting. Yeah, because, I mean, it's something that you can't deny, the drop in numbers, right? So once you do it yourself, right? I saw the facts for myself. So it's going to make it likely that I'm going to agree that, hey, we need to boost it up, right? Okay, so let's go to the next part. In addition to employing facts to his argument's advantage, Goodman so cunningly, okay, I don't want to use the word cunning. This is a little bit, I mean, it has a little bit of a negative connotation, so I won't use this word. You can say something like deftly, or something like that, right? Or adroitly. Right? Something that can say, or tactfully, right? Discusses the counter argument to his position by writing about. Okay, so I guess this is going to discuss the counter argument parts. I want to see quotes, but I don't say any quotes except here. but we'll take a look. By writing about how social media and man-on-the-ground reporting has had some positive impact on the state foreign news reporting, heads off naysayers at the past. Okay, so basically this is elaborating on the claim. So still, it's not about the quote, it's about what he's doing. It would have been very easy for Goodman to elide over the whole issue of citizen reporting, but the resultant one-sided argument would have been much less convincing. Okay, so he's talking about what he did not do, right? He just didn't go on with his own point, right? What did he do? He covered both sides. And what's the impact of covering both sides? You seem more balanced and you seem more thoughtful. It seems like you put in more thought and you recognize both sides of the argument, and thus you are more convincing. You sound more convincing, right? Instead, Goodman acknowledges things like the force of blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here we have the quote. As a result, when he partially, so here, okay, so this is a little bit more advanced writing. So we talk about the consequence first, and then we talk about the instances. But I would have liked to see a little bit more quotes towards the beginning if I were to write the essay to make it a little bit more obvious. But this works also, okay? Circumstance, as a result, when he partially refutes this argument by stating the unease many longtime blah, blah, blah the reader is much more likely to believe him. Okay, so I mean, yeah. So this is just, I mean, he said what he didn't do, right? If he didn't state the opponent's view, he would have been less convincing, but he did state their point of view, and that makes him more convincing. That's basically just what he said. After all, Goodman acknowledges that social media does have some power. Knowing that Goodman takes the power of social media seriously will make the reader more inclined, in turn, to take Goodman's concern about the limits of social media seriously. Yeah, so this is also something that he did, right? So it's a very in-depth analysis of how that's going to, how the readers are to take in this information, because he acknowledges both sides of the argument, right? So they're going to be more believing towards him. Like they will see his point as more balanced. They will see he has prepared for his argument a lot, right? Okay, so and then let's go to the next part. It says the final piece that helps bolster Goodman's argument, blah, 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 is Goodman's linguistic and stylistic choices. Okay, so linguistic, stylistic choices. So I guess this is going to be discussing his language primarily. So his language. Let's see what kind of language he uses. Goodman uses contrast to draw the reader deeper into his mindset. Okay, so first of all, he says contrast, but what is this going to be? By setting up the contrast between professional reporters as informational filters that discriminate good from bad and amateur, man-on-the-spot reporters as undiscriminating funnels, Goodman forces the reader to view the two in opposition and admit that professional filters are to be preferred over funnels that add speculation, propaganda, and blah, blah, blah. Right? Okay, so this one is just talking about the contrast, and he sets up the contrast here, right? And this also includes the consequence, so this is good. In addition, Goodman drives the reader along toward agreeing with his conclusion in the blah, 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 with the blah, 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 we need. Okay, so this is some, yeah. So this is the quote. This is an additional quote, right? So he had the quote plus consequence here, and then now I guess we have another quote, and I guess what's the consequence of this going to be? We talked about this a little bit, right? The use of we more generally through the end serves to make the readers feel sympathetic towards Goodman and identify with them. Okay, so like a very simple consequence, right? So if you chose to dedicate this paragraph entirely to inclusive language or something like that, it would have been very empty. You just mentioned this one consequence and you would run out of things to say, but he chose to be more encompassing in his point. He chose to say, hey, we're talking about the language, right? Stylistic choice and his linguistic choice. And then he mentions the contrast and he talks about the use of we, and that's good, okay? So this is the conclusion. We're not going to take a look at the conclusion. Instead, we're just going to move on to the next essay. So let's take another look at another essay. Let's see how well this is written. Okay. So media presentation from across the globe is vital. All right. So okay, come on, shut up. Don't do this. Don't do this. Right. You don't need to start off with the hook. Just don't. Okay. How this information is obtained, if presented at all, is a different story, however. I don't care. I don't care. Come on. Just get to the point. Okay. Goodman builds an argument to persuade his audience that news organizations should increase the amount of professional. Okay, so this is his main point, right? You need to mention the passage. You need to mention the name of the passage. Okay. You can't just do this. Where does he do it? Right? Through the present. So okay. Well, let's see what his chosen techniques are. So this is number one, right? Statistics, presentation of statistics. I'm a little bit worried about presentation of statistics because this could potentially be, I don't want like a less developed paragraph because that's what usually happens when students choose statistics. Connections to social media as well as using specific diction. What? Connections to social media? So this is going to be the second point. So I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work because, what kind of technique is this? I don't understand. But the next one is going to be specific diction, right? Okay, so those are going to be the 3 points. Let's take a look. Okay, so Goodman uses statistics and facts as presented by blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah. I mean, this is also something that the previous essay discussed. And and then he says, in order to show, so this is like what he chose to do is he chose to include the consequence here, right? But I guess, hopefully this is just a taste. Hopefully this is not the entire consequence. I don't think you can describe the consequence like just this shortly. Let's take a look. In order to show the loss of foreign correspondents reporting to the U.S. In order to, that sounds really bad, right? This is your first sentence anyway, so you could have just mentioned one, right? Just in order to show the loss of foreign correspondents. You could have ended here, and you could have included this information a little bit later, right? In order to persuade his audience that there is a need for professional coverage. Okay, so I guess we have a present consequence and a future consequence. But it's phrased poorly. You don't want to say in order to A, in order to B, right? It's dirty, the sentence, right? He begins his essay with the statistic saying that the level, blah, 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 this, okay? This conveys that the number of people, okay, so this is his quote, I guess. But rather, I would have liked to seen some quotations, like actual quotations, instead of just paraphrasing the whole thing. Although it is quite a simple point, so I guess you could if you want to, but I still want to always quote stuff. Okay, so I guess now you need to discuss the consequence. What does it say? It conveys that the number of people providing legitimate and credible information to the news. I like this. Legitimate and credible information. So this is something that you added, right, in this essay, right? So providing legitimate and credible information to the news is going down, thus alluding to the overall decrease in foreign media. Okay, that's pretty good, right? That's good. Okay, and then what does he say? He uses this to build his argument by evoking his audience to think that. I wouldn't say invoke here. Well, did you mean to say invoke? Well, anyway, just convey to his audience or something like that, or challenge his audience to think or something like that, right? Not invoke. It's not evoke. It's not invoke. What is this? I think it's a mistake. It's okay though. Think that they may not be getting all the true media and facts presented. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, he discusses Okay, like he discusses a lot of consequences, so this is good. He uses the statistic to the shrinking correspondence to establish the fact that if this number is to continually decrease, there may be in the future a lack of unbiased media presentation. Huh. This is reading a little bit too much into it, so I wouldn't include this actually. I mean, this is inferring a little bit too much. So I'm not sure of this, but asking his audience to consider the importance of foreign news coverage. No, this is wrong. I mean, he just said there's a decrease. He didn't, I mean, it's not talking about the importance of it, right? Just the fact that there's a decrease. I mean, if I'm saying something is decreasing, does that point to, I mean, am I saying that's really important? No, I don't think so, right? So this is wrong, okay? Okay, so I was excited to see a lot of consequences, but no, it's not correct. The latter part is not correct technically. Okay, let's take a look. Goodman connects to the vast implications of bias presented via social media. Okay. This is something that you shouldn't do. Okay, this is not a technique, right? Connects to the vast because this is talking about the what, right? It's not the question. I mean, the prompt. What the prompt is asking us to do is to talk about how the author conveys his or her point. It's not what the author is doing, right? So, I mean, what kind of technique? This is not a technique. Like, is this? I mean, if anything, he could have said logical appeal, right? Like he makes a logical argument, and you can talk about how that is. I mean, as an example, you can talk about how he connects to the implications of bias and stuff like that. So. But this itself cannot serve as a main point, okay? Reporters know the power of Twitter, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this is the quote, right? And then pouring white nose, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what does he do? Further builds his argument here in order to persuade his audience by showing how with the rise of social media, more bias, blah, 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 can be projected and wrongly viewed. This is trash, okay? Like, I mean, what... This is just so this is something that you shouldn't do. This is just discussing the what, right? I don't understand why he chose to include this, right? Because this itself is not a technique, strictly speaking. So this is something that you shouldn't do. You should always stick to stuff that we talked about, like appeal to emotion, expert opinion, statistics, whatever, juxtaposition, tone and diction, language, those kinds of things. But I don't know. I don't understand what this was trying to accomplish. Let's go to the next paragraph. It says, Goodman says this to evoke a concern within his audience. Okay, so I guess this is elaborating on the consequence a little bit. So let's just take a look. So he tries to evoke a concern within his audience. What I like about this is he didn't say this evokes a concern, right? He said he says this to do something. So it's talking about his purpose, which is good, right? So this is when we're talking about someone's purpose, this is a past consequence, right? What the author was thinking, what his purpose was, right? And then you can talk about how that fits into his argument, and then what kind of impact that's going to have on the reader. So, okay, like that's a good way. Within his audience about the truth in media. Blatantly put, accounts for that. If you want unbiased foreign media people, Goodman accounts for that. What? If you want unbiased foreign media, people must turn from social media such as Twitter and Facebook and turn toward professional foreign media. Okay, this is just discussing. I mean, this is just regurgitating what the author said. So I'm not so sure about this. I'm not sure why this is included. Presenting this idea of possible fallacy within social media greatly establishes his purpose, as well as affirms his audience on whether they agree with them or not. Well, okay, first of all, if you're going to say it establishes his purpose, then you need to elaborate on this. I don't know what you're talking about here. So I mean, I'm just not a big fan of this whole thing. Like it's kind of a mess actually. Okay, you got caught up talking about the what too much in these two paragraphs. So let's move on to the last one. So this one is probably talking about what is this, diction, right? Okay, so let's see how he uses diction. Okay, also Goodman uses specific diction. Okay, specific diction. I mean, whenever you're going to be discussing diction, you would talk about connotative diction, right? I don't know specific diction? I mean, did you mean like certain choices of words? I mean, I guess that's what you intended to do, because I don't know what you mean when you say specific diction. Anyway, let's take a look. To further establish his argument to persuade his audience, Goodman uses personal pronouns. Okay, so I mean, yeah, you can technically include this under diction because it is a choice of words, right? So so he uses we. Okay, so he uses we. No. Okay, well, you can say this, but you need to talk about the instance. You need to talk about the context. So you need, I mean, you need to quote more. This is not enough. You can't just say he uses we a lot. Well, where does he use we? Where's the part that he uses we? And in discussing what does he use the word we? I want you to specify this. Okay? To show that he personally is a part of media presentation community. Well, okay, so this is his past consequence, right? So past consequence, it works, right? This was his purpose. Not only establishing his credibility on the subject. So okay, so this is how it fits into the present, right? Establishes his credibility on the subject, but also aiding in his persuasion of his audience. All right, this is the future. Right? Okay, so this is actually really solid. This is a solid consequence, right? Because it has all the past, present, and future, right? It has what the author's purpose was when he was doing it, how it fits into the context, and how it's going to potentially impact the audience, right? By allowing them to think he is an expert in the field. Okay, that's good. All right, so that's solid, right? So I don't like this essay, but I have to give it to this guy. This consequence, like encompassing all three parts, that's pretty good. Through his word choice, Goodman further establishes his argument by ascribing the need for more foreign reporter, not as a burden, but as a challenge. I have no idea how you made that connection. Through just by saying we, you establish your argument by ascribing the need for more foreign reporters? Really? Okay, so if you were to say this, you should have quoted a little bit more. I mean, just by using the word we, how do you achieve this effect? This is totally unwarranted, okay? So this is something that I don't want you guys to do. So whenever you're going to make a consequence, you shouldn't take for granted that the audience knows exactly what you're talking about. You need to quote the specific parts, discuss that, explain it, and then connect it to the consequence. Because, you know, I just don't get it. I don't understand how the word we can have this kind of effect. This adds to the persuasion of his audience by showing that this is a real problem. Really? Okay, so see what this guy did? Like he just quoted this part, right? You use the word we a lot, and then you talk about all these different kinds of consequences. I mean, if you were to do this, you need to mention the specific parts, like I said, and you need to discuss those parts in more depth in order for you to come up with this conclusion, to come up with this consequence, right? And this one is a little bit, it's lacking a lot. Goodman's use of up-to-date reference as well as connection to blah, 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 blah. persuading his audience of the need to do so. Okay, so that's the conclusion. And the conclusion for the conclusion, you just need to restate the point, right? Restate the main point and mention the 3 techniques that you used, but make sure in the conclusion. Okay, so I haven't told you guys this, but write this down. So in the conclusion, preferably, your 3 techniques should be mentioned in greater detail than in the intro, right? Because in the intro, you're just kind of introducing the information, right? So, I mean, you could say just juxtaposition, but in the conclusion, you could say something like juxtaposition of connotative diction and stuff like that, right? So you should specify it a little bit more when you're writing in the conclusion, because you're summing up what you said in the body paragraphs, right? And your conclusion doesn't need to be more than a sentence long, okay? If anything, okay, if you're running out of time though, I would rather have you finish your thoughts. So I wouldn't like, if you didn't finish your last body paragraph, don't feel the need to include a conclusion. I would rather forego the conclusion, just not have it, and you complete the consequence, because that's what's going to get your analysis points, okay? So, don't feel like, don't like stop in the middle of your body paragraph, like mid-reasoning, to write your conclusion, okay? That's also something I want to talk about. Okay, so any questions? So any questions on this essay or this passage or whatever, or if you have any general questions about the essay section, we'll discuss that. Okay, so I would have preferred if you guys did more rephrasing, because rephrasing is actually a big part of the SAT too, right? Not the SAT essay. I'm saying the reading section also. Like rephrasing is it's a huge part, and they're indirectly testing your ability to rephrase stuff, right? On the essay section. So that's something that you should consciously practice, not just for the SAT essay, but also for the sake of reading. Because in the reading parts, it's always asking for you to rephrase information. Basically, that's what you do when you're solving questions. When you're solving local questions, you're just basically rephrasing what the passage said in terms of the answer choices, right? So rephrasing, just, and you should make like a word bank or whatever, right? So like I said last time, if you're talking about like expert opinion, you want to rephrase this in a lot of different ways that you can remember, okay? So like expert opinion, we talked about this, right? The insight he pointedly offers, or something like that. Right, so just remember, just make a note of all the things that you can potentially rephrase pretty mechanically out of just rote memorization, so that you guys can comfortably use it on test day. Okay. Okay. If you have any more questions, now's the time to ask. Okay. If not, okay. If you want to try writing an essay on any of the prompts that are given to you, you can share it with me, and but if you share it to me next week, I'm not sure how long it will take for me. Okay, it might take like 2 or 3 days, so just remember that. Okay, if you guys don't have any more questions, we'll end at that. Okay.